How do you tell what size a nib is if it doesn't have any markings? Okay, so there's kind of like two ways that I can interpret this question. Size meaning like fine, medium, broad. It's actually somewhat rare to come across pens like that don't have any designation. It definitely does happen. Platinum has a couple of pens like that. You know, there's some that just don't have any designation whatsoever. That gets a little, you know, annoying. Usually that's pretty easy. So you can usually just kind of write with it, compare it to, if you have another fountain pen, compare it to another fountain pen you have, and then be able to tell that way. That's probably the best way. Once you've handled quite a few pens, you can almost tell pretty much just by looking at the tip about what size it is. The other way that I can interpret this question is probably a much more common one that I feel we get asked about a lot, which is basically how do you tell like the overall size of the nib? Like here's a nib pulled out of a pen, and how do you tell whether it's a number 6 or a number 5 or whatever, right? We get asked about that a lot because there is no designation of that on the nib itself. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, so you're going to get to see how unshaven I actually am. Woo, okay. Oh, weird throat thing. Hey, hello. I have a monitor over here so I can see if I'm in focus or not. So when you have a nib like this, if it will focus on my nib, ta-da, there it is. Little Goulet nib there. If you have a nib like this, the way to tell the actual size designation, this is a number 6 size nib. And the way that you can tell it's a number 6 size is if you look, there's a curvature to the nib here. And if you measure in between the point here and the point over here, the distance there is 6 millimeters. So I've got my ruler here. Da-da-da. All right, I'm gonna try to do this like it's all mirrored in reverse and stuff like that, but it's gonna be kind of weird. Okay. So if you look there, if I measure in between, boom, 6 millimeters. Oops, hold it still, 6 millimeters right there. Now, another pen, such as the Goulet Sport that I just showed earlier. So if I yank the nib out of this thing, it's a smaller nib, and I'll show you just how. Okay, so I pull the nib and feed out. And if you look at the overall size of the nib, you can tell that it's a lot smaller than the number 6 that I just had. Whoa, what a difference, right? Huge difference. Okay, so you can have different lengths of nib and stuff like that, but the Goulet, if I use the ruler, sorry, the focus is gonna go nuts. Okay, so here's the ruler. So if I hold that up, you can see, ooh, yeah, there we go, 5 millimeters. Okay, so number 5 nib, 5 millimeters. Number 6 nib, 6 millimeters right there. So that's how it works, okay? That's the big magic secret of how you measure nib sizes. Now, the confusing and frustrating thing is that, you know, many, almost all pen manufacturers do not advertise what size designation their nibs actually are. And I kind of get it because most pen companies aren't really wanting you to go swapping their nibs with other brands' nibs because they can't warranty them, they have no idea what the flow is going to be like and stuff like that. And sometimes you can have a number 6 that has a little bit different bend or curvature to it so it won't flow right and all that kind of stuff. So pen companies match up their feeds and the engineering design with their feeds to match the nibs that they're going to be using on it. So, and they tweak the nibs and stuff like that accordingly so that it's going to work properly in that pen. When you go swapping and stuff like that, sometimes just an even swap, even if it's the same like number 6 nib or whatever, the flow is a little bit different and it maybe isn't kind of what you expect because it's not really designed necessarily to fit that pen. These aren't made to be truly universal most of the time. So it requires a little bit of hack, a little bit of tweaking and stuff like that. But in general, that at least answers your question of how do you tell what size of the whole nib that you're dealing with. Cool?